It began on a night when the snow fell so steadily it swallowed sound. The world outside the windows turned to white breath and soft erasure, and the old pine by the porch bowed under a weight that looked like sleep. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm a single dad. My daughter Ava is 8. My son Noah is 5. And for 3 years I've been running our little ship with 2 oars and a lot of guessing. Their mom, Maya, passed away, and when she left, I folded the rest of my life up the way you fold a sweater you don't think you'll wear again, carefully, respectfully, and into the back of the closet. Since then, my days have been measured by small victories. Clean mittens found before the bus arrives, homework done without tears, bedtime stories where everyone, including me, believes in the happy ending. We drove up to Vermont for the kids' winter break because I wanted silence that wasn't loneliness. I rented a simple cabin, a single open room with a loft and a stone fireplace that looked like it had a good memory. The plan was small on purpose. Snow angels, hot chocolate, one puzzle with missing pieces we'd pretend to find. The kind of days that stack gently. On our first afternoon, the sky wore that pewter color that makes you think of stoves and soups. Ava made a perfect snow angel on her first try, arms sweeping, mittens squeaking against the crust. Noah pressed 2 serious hands into the snow and then laughed like he'd invented ice. I took photos I'll never delete. By dusk, word spread that a big storm was coming. Roads could close, power could blink. I stacked the wood by the door, checked the batteries in the lantern, and told the kids we'd have an early night. They cheered because early night means more stories. The wind started its long whistle around 11. I was feeding the fireplace, welcoming the way heat moves like a living thing, when someone knocked on the door. That sound didn't belong to this hour or this storm. It was careful but urgent, and I felt my heartbeat answer it. I opened the door into a spray of snow and found a woman. White parka glazed with flurries, cheeks pink with cold, breath coming in little clouds. Her hair was tucked into a knit cap, and her eyes were the bright, hopeful kind that appear when you've just chosen to try instead of wait. "Hi," she said, voice shaking from the cold and the courage to ask. "I'm Harper Quinn. My car. It's stuck half a mile down. Phone died. I saw the smoke from your chimney." "Could I, just for a little?" "Of course," I said, already stepping aside. "Come in, please." She crossed the threshold with that stumble people make when warmth takes their balance. I shut the door against the storm's polite push and took her coat. It was heavy with snow and road. I wrapped a wool blanket around her shoulders and guided her to the fireside. Her hands hovered over the flames, and she let out a breath that sounded like relief remembered. "Thank you," she said. "If you weren't here." "You're here," I said. "That's what matters." Ava woke at the sound, bed hair all ideas. She rubbed her eyes and blinked at the living room, at the stranger by the fire. "Dad, who's that?" "This is Harper," I said. Her car slid in the snow. "She's warming up." Harper lifted a hand. "Hi, Ava. I love your slippers." They were cat slippers that meowed if you stepped just right. Ava stepped just right and they meowed. Noah appeared next, clutching his dinosaur pajama top like it was a cape. "Nice T-Rex," Harper said, serious like she knew the importance of dinosaurs. Noah nodded solemnly and then hid behind my leg with the bravery of a 5-year-old. I made hot chocolate for 4 and handed the kids their cups with extra marshmallows because fear and sugar have an understanding. I gave Harper hers with both hands because I wanted it to feel like the gift it was. She took a sip and closed her eyes. "That's perfect," she said softly, and there was something in the way she said it that put calm in the room, like the fire had just leaned in closer. The lights went out 5 minutes later. It wasn't dramatic, just a soft click and a surrender. The cabin fell into that deep orange and shadow world where the fire becomes the sun. Outside, the wind pressed its ear to the windows. The storm had found us in earnest. "It's okay," I said automatically, remembering how many times I'd practiced that line for my children. "We've got this." I flicked on a lantern. Harper used her phone's last breath to open a flashlight and then turned it off, saving what was left. Ava scooted closer to Harper without asking, the way kids decide things before adults do. Noah climbed into my lap and tucked his feet under the blanket. Harper glanced at me once. "May I?" And then began to tell a story in a voice meant for fires. "Once upon a winter, there were 2 brave explorers," she said, eyes twinkling toward Ava and Noah. They could hear what snow was trying to say, not with ears, but with the part of your heart that knows when to wear your warmest socks. The kids leaned into her words like plants to a window. She wasn't reading. She was weaving. She made the wind a messenger, the dark a blanket, the cabin a ship that knew how to float on drifts. By the time she said, "And the explorers fell asleep knowing they were exactly where they needed to be," both of my kids were proof. We tucked them in. Ava's hand found mine in the half-light and squeezed like she was reassuring me. I stood by the bunk a moment longer than I needed to. In the quiet, I could hear Harper's breathing even out. When I turned, she was watching the snow at the window like it might answer. I sat back by the fire across from her. "Thank you," I said. You were good with them." She smiled, the kind that doesn't need teeth to count. "I'm a speech therapist," she said, laughing at herself. "I spend my days convincing kids to fall in love with sounds. R's and S's and the courage to try again." "Denver?" I asked, hearing it in her vowels. She nodded. "A workshop brought me up near here. I was driving back when the storm decided I needed different plans." She studied me for a second with curiosity, not intrusion. "And you?" "I'm a graphic designer. Freelance." I looked around the room where I'd built a little world. "We came for the quiet. Sometimes quiet is where everything important says hello," she said. The way she said it felt like she'd learned it the hard way. The fire gave us its warmth in shares, and the temperature continued to fall. I added wood, but the room had that deep storm chill that elbows between logs and blankets. I fetched the biggest quilt I owned. Thick wool, scratchy in the way things are when they last forever. I hesitated and then held it up. "We can share," I said gently, practical like a bridge. "It'll hold the heat better." Harper shifted just enough, and I draped one half around her shoulders and the other around mine. We sat with a space between us that felt like respect and permission. After a minute, she said quietly, amused and tender, "You're careful." "I have to be," I admitted. "I'm out of practice, and I've got 2 reasons to get it right." "I know," she said, and the "I know" wasn't pity. It was empathy's older sister. We watched the flames make shapes on the ceiling. She told me about a boy who came to her afraid to say his own name because the R in it scared him, and how the first time he said it, he stood up straighter. I told her about Ava's artwork on the fridge and how Noah negotiates bedtime like a tiny lawyer, who's great at precedent. We traded small truths and let the big ones wait. Morning arrived in blinding white. The windows filled with it, and the door didn't want to open because snow had shouldered up against it like a loyal dog. I pushed and swept and made a path that felt like intention. The storm had pressed pause on the world. The road was a rumor. We ate pancakes. Ava stirred batter like a conductor, and I poured misshapen dinosaurs for Noah that he declared masterpieces. Harper rinsed bowls, humming something that belonged to sunlight, and I felt a part of myself stand next to me and say, "Careful. This is nice." We spent the afternoon making a story together, our house game. Each person adds a sentence. Noah started, "Once there was a hero who was friends with the snow." Ava added, "He met a friend who could teach letters to sing." Harper continued, "They walked until they found a house where the cold stayed outside and the warm stayed in." "When it was my turn," I said, "and they kept walking together even when the road looked like a question." The kids clapped like I'd pulled a rabbit out of a hat. By dusk, the wind returned, the lights left, and the fire gathered us again. I asked Harper if she wanted to try the roads in the morning. I didn't know how to ask if she wanted to try staying. She bit her lip and looked at the frosted window. "Let's see what the plows decide," she said, but her eyes moved toward the kids. Ava got sleepy first. Harper sang to her quietly, a tune I didn't know but wanted to. Noah fought sleep like a gladiator and then surrendered mid-sentence. We carried them to the bunk and stood there, dumb and devoted. Back by the fire, I cleared my throat and said the sentence that had been tapping on my ribs for a year. "I'm not good at this, at letting people in." I told myself I wouldn't, not again. It felt like being careful was the same as being strong. Harper didn't rush to fill the quiet. When she spoke, it was soft enough that the fire leaned closer. "Some doors you don't open yourself," she said. "Sometimes the air changes and you realize a window's been open a while and you're still breathing." She slid her hand a few inches under the quilt, enough that her fingers were near mine. I moved my hand until our fingertips touched, not clasped, and it felt like someone saying grace. The next morning, the sky was hard blue and the snow glittered like someone had ground up glass and hope together. The roads were still closed. Harper said she wanted to check on her car, and I said, I'll go with you. At the same time, she said, you don't have to, which is how you can tell two people are trying to be polite and honest at once. We bundled up and told the kids we'd be 15 minutes. The world outside was the kind of silent that makes you feel like a visitor. Our boots made neat, earnest prints. We found the car half swallowed by a drift. We started digging and we laughed at the same time because we were ridiculous and determined and alive. Harper's foot slipped on a sneaky patch of ice, and she slid toward a shallow ditch with a surprised yelp. I caught her by the elbow and then around the waist, and she steadied against me. Our breaths made little clouds that merged and disappeared. Thanks, she said, breathless with the almost of it. Anytime, I said, and she raised an eyebrow like, that's a big promise. Maybe it's one I've been wanting to make, I added, and we both stared at the snow so we wouldn't have to stare at each other too hard. When we came back in, the kids surprised us with a game they'd invented called Secret Swap. You tell one secret that makes your heart lighter, Ava declared, master of ceremonies. Noah went first. I'm a little scared at night, he announced bravely. But when the fire talks, I'm a superhero. Ava said, sometimes I think Mom watches us from far away and she likes our drawings. Harper's eyes softened. Those are beautiful secrets, she said. And when it was her turn, she glanced at me once and then told the truth a person practices only once. I'm not afraid of snow, she said, smiling. But sometimes I'm afraid of being alone. Noah reached across the blanket and held her hand because he's exactly who I want him to be. Now you're not, he said. Ava pointed at me like a lawyer with a winning argument. Dad? I looked at all three of them, disguised as an ordinary evening. My secret, I said, and my voice did that thing where it's quiet because it means what it's saying, is that I thought my heart had closed for good. But I think it was sleeping, and I think it's waking up. That night we all tucked under the big quilt together, Ava pressed against Harper's side, Noah sprawled across my lap like a cat who pays rent in purrs. I told a story that borrowed the bones of truth. Once upon a time there was a cabin that creaked in all the right places. 4 people found it on a snowy night. Outside the wind bragged. Inside the fire introduced itself. The door stayed locked against the storm, but someone opened a window and let in something warm. Harper picked up the thread, and from then on the cold visited politely and left on time, and the warm stayed and did the dishes. On the 3rd morning the plow had carved the road into existence. You could hear the ordinary hum of a world remembering itself. Harper said the sentence I knew was coming. I should try to get back today. Ava's face fell, fresh and sincere. Noah, who had newly learned the art of negotiating, said, But you can live here. Harper crouched to meet his eyes. What if I come back soon? If your dad makes hot chocolate again? She looked at me over Noah's head, smiling in that unsteady way of people offering something that sounds small and means big. Deal, I said, and my heart said it twice. We brushed off her windshield together and cleared the exhaust like we were making a runway. At the end of the drive, she rolled down her window, hair loose now, eyes bright with something answering. She lifted her hand. I lifted mine. She turned the corner and the white swallowed the red of her taillights, and the cabin exhaled in a way that was mostly hope. 2 days later, the knock came when afternoon light turned everything gold. Harper stood on the porch like a line I'd been waiting to read. Her hair was down, her cheeks were that healthy winter pink, and she held a thermos and a little paper bag. Cookies, she said, embarrassed at being sweet. And a secret. Ava and Noah whooped like a parade. I did not whoop. I smiled the kind of smile that makes your chest feel bigger than your shirt. What's the secret? I asked, careful, delighted, trying to play it cool and failing in all the ways that matter. She placed the thermos on the counter and spoke without ceremony. I'm not going back to Denver yet. She swallowed and kept her eyes steady. There's a part-time opening at a clinic in town. Speech therapy for kids. I said I'd consider it. I want to consider it here. She took a breath that was almost a laugh. If that works with your schedule and your heart. I didn't rush to answer because I wanted the answer to be a choice, not a reflex. I looked at my kids. Ava already drawing Harper as a stick figure with very important hair. Noah trying to open the cookie bag politely and failing. I looked at Harper. There was no demand in her expression, just room. My heart, I said, is learning new math. I stepped closer. There's room. That night we made pasta, which is Italian for community. Ava set the table like a person who understood circles. Noah salted the garlic bread with the seriousness of a chef who knows love and salt are cousins. We played Secret Swap again because tradition starts exactly that quickly when it's good. Noah said, "My secret is I want Harper to stay every day." Harper hugged him and said, "That's my favorite secret." Ava looked at the window where the snow caught the last light and said, "My secret is I think Mom is happy." The light in the window is bigger now. I kissed her forehead and told her she was the smartest person I knew. "Obviously," she said, like the child of a designer and a woman who saw through clouds. The snow fell that evening in the gentle way it does when it isn't trying to prove anything. Harper traced little circles on the table absent-mindedly, like she was writing a song in Braille. I said her name like an invitation. "Harper," she looked up. "Yes? I know this is fast." I put both palms on the table because honesty likes empty hands. I can't promise I'll always be brave. Some days I'm soft and some days I'm scattered. But when you're here, this place feels more like a home than a rental. When you laugh, they laugh faster. I don't need perfect. I need true. I'm not asking for easy, she said, matching me. I'm asking for honest. I can promise honest, I said, feeling the rightness of the words as I said them. Later, we shared the big quilt again. The space between our shoulders was smaller than the first night. I held her hand properly this time, and she held back with the pressure that means yes. The fire put our shadows on the wall, 4 of them, a small family I would have sworn was pretending if I hadn't felt every part of it. Weeks blurred into the kind of routine I'd forgotten how to love. Harper took the part-time job. She left in the mornings with a travel mug and came back with stories that didn't break confidentiality, but repaired cynicism. She taught Noah to take his time with his R's. Raise your tongue, she'd coach gently. Feel it almost touch. Rain, right, he'd say, and his smile would arrive before the sound did, as if his grin was the invitation that made the letter possible. Ava flourished in ways that looked like art class A's and also like the quiet way she began to claim space at the table. We started a sunshine jar, slips of paper with good moments. Dad remembered snack day. Harper's soup fix Tuesday. Ava helped Noah read. Snow looks like sugar. I would empty the jar sometimes, when the house was quiet, and count the ways we were winning. One Saturday, Ava asked if we could drive to the big bridge. Not to be sad, she said quickly, just to say hi. We went. We threw 2 yellow flowers into the water because the grocery store was out of daisies but not meaning. We watched them spin and decide on a direction. On the walk back, the air felt lighter at my back, like something had been carried for me and then put down. That evening on the porch, Harper stood with her hands tucked into her sleeves like a child pretending to be a snowman. The flakes came slow and confident. "A secret?" she asked, smiling because rituals make confessions kinder. "Another one?" I teased. She nodded, then searched my face the way you check a map and your compass at once. "I think I'm falling for you, Ethan." Time paused like the first note of a favorite song. I didn't reach for big words. I took one step closer so the breath between us was the same temperature. "Then I'll tell you mine," I said. "I am too. Slow true with the kids watching. I want us to be something we don't have to hide." We wrapped ourselves in the quilt on the porch like we were learning a dance that involved cloth and trust. The snow made the kind of hush that feels like a promise. I rested my forehead against hers and felt the ordinary magic that makes days add up to life. Emotions didn't need fireworks. They needed room. We gave them room. Life didn't turn into a montage. It turned into Tuesdays. Groceries, bills, library books under couch cushions, tiny socks in the dryer that cling like disappointments don't. I made good coffee and okay pancakes. Harper taught me how to listen better. Not as a man trying to fix things, but as a friend wanting to understand them. The kids built forts and then invited us in, and we learned you can say yes to joy even if grief lives in the same house. We didn't replace the past. We set another chair at the table. On a quiet night when the wind pushed against the panes and then gave up, I wrote a letter to my children because I wanted them to have words that lasted longer than my voice. "Dear Ava and Noah," I wrote, "if the world ever feels too big and you feel too small, remember there's a window inside you that lets the light in. Keep it clean. Open it even when your hands shake. Especially then. P.S. I'm proud of you every day. Not just on good ones." Harper found me at the desk and leaned against the doorway. smiling at me the way you smile at a person who seems to be becoming himself. Writing? She asked. Trying, I said. Me too, she answered, and walked over and put her hand on my shoulder. And in the language of hands, we told each other what our mouths were still practicing. Sometimes at night, when everyone is asleep, I stand by the window and watch the snow settle like patience. The wind chime on the porch, a little copper one Harper brought from a yard sale, makes a sound like a yes that took its time. In the glass, I see my reflection beside the room, and for a second it looks like there are 4 of us awake. The me I used to be, the me I am, and the 2 I'm becoming for the people who need me. I think of Maya with love that doesn't argue with today, and I say thank you into the dark, and I feel answered. We still play secret swap. The kids' secrets got smaller and sweeter. I stole 2 grapes. I like Thursdays best. I think the moon looks like a cookie. One night, Ava looked at me seriously across the circle and said, "My secret is that I think you're brave." I told her that bravery looks a lot like showing up, and she said, "Obviously." And we all laughed like people who knew we were exactly where we were supposed to be. There was a night when the storm returned in a hurry, and the power left generously, and we didn't mind. We made a tent with blankets and read by lantern light and let the wind boast. Harper curled against me under the quilt and whispered, "You know what I like about storms now?" I shook my head. "They tell the truth," she said. "They make you pick who you want to be close to." I kissed the top of her head. Then I am very grateful for accurate weather. The cabin changed around us in little ways. We put photos on the mantel, not to replace old ones, to join them. Maya's smile sat beside a picture of the 4 of us at the sledding hill, cheeks red, eyes squinting, happiness unembarrassed. We hung a calendar on a nail and filled it with things that felt like a life. A dentist appointment, a school concert, a clinic workshop. A Saturday circled for no reason, but that it would be ours. We bought a second-hand board game with half its pieces missing and figured out our own rules. We taught the house what laughter sounded like. Spring will come. It always does. No matter how much a place thinks it's married to snow, the road will turn black and then dusty and then be a road again. We'll go home to our regular town and find ways to keep this winter with us that don't involve weather at all. We'll visit the cabin next year if we can. The way pilgrims visit places that reminded them they were alive. We'll sit on the same porch with the same quilt, and we'll be slightly different because that's what time asks from those who use it well. But for now, on this night, in this light, with the fire choosing which log to love next and the world pausing at the windows like a curious guest, I can tell you this without worrying I'll jinx it. I am happy. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that makes you want to tell strangers. The kind that fits. The kind that holds your hand and sits on your couch and helps with the dishes and kisses you on the cheek and says, "We're okay." I look over at Harper, who is pretending to watch the flames and actually feeling them, and I squeeze her fingers and she squeezes back, and neither of us has to say anything, which is its own language. Ava snores a little from the loft. Noah murmurs in his sleep and then sighs like a person who trusts the night. I close my eyes and hear the wind chime make its small brave sound, and I think of a line I will write on a piece of paper and tuck into the sunshine jar tomorrow morning. We chose each other, and we keep choosing. Outside, the snow keeps teaching the world how to shine by borrowing light. Inside, we do the same.